Hey guys, this is Jackie from Jack Gets Lost on a Book Hole, and I recently, for one of the Strike Back Videothon ideas, there was a topic where you talked about your top 10 books on your TBR this year, and I have decided to do separate list, top 10 lists, like I did I've already done top 10 standalones, and I did top 10, books on my TBR that are from a series. So now I'm doing my top 10 books that on my TBR that are books I need to reread. Which actually I just realized one of them I can take off. I totally forgot. Is that what that is? Oh no, never mind. Okay, so first. Excuse me, guys. Let's just start with these. Okay, so my first one I have on here, and these are in no particular order on their importance or anything like that of when I want to read them, like priority-wise. I just randomly, the first ones that pop into my head. This Clash of Kings by George R. R. Martin, the second book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, or the common title being Game of Thrones, because the TV series, because Game of Thrones rolls better off the tongue than a Song of Ice and Fire series. I read the first two books years ago, and I started reading the third book, but then I ended up taking too long of a break in between reading, and I just decided, I need to start over. So I reread the first book, A Game of Thrones, which is what the show was named after, and then I started reading the second one, and I have not gotten very far in it, but it has been a while since I started my reread. So I couldn't tell you how, I'm on one of Tyrion's chapters. He's one of my favorite characters. I can't tell you what happened because I don't remember. And it's just, this is one of those books that it's hard for me to recall everything. I mean, it amazes me sometimes the details people recall from from series like this, whether it's a book or even a TV show. Like yesterday, I finally watched the newest episode of Supernatural, and I only have one friend that I know watches the show, so I started talking to her, and a character that I absolutely love and was waiting for came back in the newest episode. And so I was talking to my friend about it, how excited I was, and she made a reference to a line from an episode from another season. An earlier season was said in the episode. It was repeated. And I did not even notice that. I mean, I'm thinking, how were you able to recall that? And now, of course, when I first see something or first read a book, I can't remember things like that. I can't remember details like specific lines that were said in an earlier season and then are brought back and repeated in the newest season. And then with books, people recall certain details and remember that this happened to this character, and this character did this, and this character is that way. I'm like, I don't remember that. I mean, unless it's like, as far as books are concerned, if it's something that is referenced in the TV show, then I'm prone to remember it better in the TV show. But then, when it's just a TV show, then I'm not going to remember those details. And it's just, I feel kind of embarrassed that other people can recall these details that I can't. But yeah, I've been wanting to I definitely want to continue my reread of the series. But this is a big chunk of a book. With books that are this size, it's hard for me to stick with them. I have to take lots of breaks in between. Another book on here that's a reread it's the same thing, and it's even longer than the Game of Thrones books, I think. So there's that one. And then Okay, the next one is, I may as well show you the one I just mentioned. I want to reread It by Stephen King. As you can see, I've already started it. Let's see. Where is I? That is such improper English. There, like, again, there's so much in books like this that, I can't figure out where I am until I start reading it, and I don't want to waste your guys' time. So, and this past weekend while I was at my sister's, if you watched my video where I talked about my weekend in reading this past week, I mentioned that I got the Blu-ray disc of It, the new movie, and I stayed up and watched it last night, and I was thinking that, okay, I'm gonna have to watch something fluffy afterwards, but it was midnight, and I tried to stick to getting in bed by midnight. I might stay up and read a little bit, but I was trying to stay with the same schedule, especially, with my job and everything. I want to get to bed at least, I want to stay up past midnight. I mean, I still will sometimes do that, but I always try to stick to the same time frame that I at least get in bed. So I ended up not getting around to watching something like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or Sleeping Beauty. That was actually the movie on my list of movies that I wanted to watch for Valentine's Day, but then I got a chance to go to visit my sister this weekend, so I ended up not getting to those movies, and I was thinking about watching them after I watched It, but it got too late, so that was good. I mean, and for a little while, I still slept with the covers over my head, because I still get scared when watching horror movies, but I love being scared when I watch movies, so that's why I watch horror movies. But yeah, I need to reread this one. And my dad's phone is ringing. I'll let it ring. But of course, if it's my mom, then she might call my phone. Or if it's my grandma, she might call my phone. But my grandma might call me. So yeah, I definitely need to reread this one. I couldn't tell you where I left off at. But yeah, this was the first Stephen King book I fell in love with. I read it years ago, and then I decided, especially around, I knew I wanted to reread it at some point, and then they were talking about remaking the movie into actual motion picture, not just a miniseries. So I was like, it would be perfect time to reread it, and I did start it, but knowing me, it would probably still take me a year longer, even if I've already read it once. Okay, so next, I want to continue my reread of the Lunar Chronicle series. I'm gonna read this soon. Crest is the third book, and then I got Winter today, which I actually will. I have another video where I'm gonna talk about all the books I purchased with Winter today. I'll tell you guys about that in another video, but. Yeah, I need to reread this series. I love this series. I fell in love with this series. And what actually inspired me to pick now to reread it was because last November I finally read Stars Above, and then because I was reading it, it was like, okay, I really want to reread the series again. So yeah, I had started I don't know if I started in December or November when I reread. I think December I started to reread Cinder. So and then I read Scarlet in February this month. I read Scarlet, and now I'm going to read Crest in Winter, and then at some point I'm going to get Wires and Nerve. Get the graphic novels for Wires and Nerve. But I really hope the series becomes either a movie or a TV series. Or even a mini-series. I think that would be awesome too. I think do 4 parts. So next reread is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I read this, again, another book I read many years ago, and everybody, now that I've joined BookTube, I am constantly hearing about this book. And it does receive some criticisms. There's a little, I think some people feel like it's very insta-lovey with the with the two people, and there's other criticisms that people make. I don't know, like, I don't know what they are, but I really want to read this one again so I can refresh my memory and be able to talk about it with everybody else, because I don't remember things. I mean, I remember the general story, but I don't remember the details and all, and I remember the characters' names, or at least the two main ones, but that's also because people are constantly talking about this book on BookTube and hoping that Erin Morgenstern will write another book. But I remember falling in love with her writing style and the atmosphere she created, and of course, I like romance, but I like romance in the plot. I don't like it as the main plot. Of course, this technically you could say that this has romance as the main plot point. But I love the whole circus style atmosphere. I think that's really cool. This one and Water for Elephants is kind of what inspired the short story I wrote for class, where this girl had a power. She had the powers of premonition, and this ringmaster comes to collect her, and it turns out the ringmaster is a werewolf, and I think he's in love with her, with the girl that has the premonitions. But I'm definitely gonna improve that. And I mean, I didn't write that long ago. It was like one of my last semester of college. I took a creative writing class, and I love I have to write fantasy. I can't just write, like, I almost have to put fantasy elements in my stories. So, but I am going to improve that one at some point. I want to rewrite that one and improve it a little bit. But anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah, I definitely want to reread this one so I can talk about it along with everybody else and be like, oh yeah, or I agree with this criticism, or I don't agree with this criticism. Okay, so the next two I have here are A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens and Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I love this story, and I love Sidney Carton. I just fell in love with his character and this story, and I'm getting more into like books about I really like the books about like the French Revolution and American Revolution, not nonfiction necessarily. I mean, I do want to read more nonfiction about it, as long as it's written in a way that's not boring I can get into. But yeah, and that's what this one is about, the French Revolution, and you look at the perspectives of Britain and France. And it's such a really good story. And actually, the funny thing is, what inspired me to finally pick up this book was I remember the kids movie A Simple Wish. Below, Mara Wilson's character's dad was in a musical version of this novel. So for some reason, that is what finally was like, okay, I need to read that. I don't know why I guess because I kind of liked the song. There was like the moment when he's singing, when the son and the daughter go to see their dad perform. Like, I liked the song. I mean, we only got like a little bit of the song because it wasn't that important to the plot. But we only got a brief snippet of what the song would be, and for some reason I just decided, okay, now I gotta read it. And this is my second Charles Dickens, or my first Charles Dickens. My second was A Christmas Carol. I've always seen the Christmas Carol movies all the time. My dad played the Ghost of Christmas Present in a community theater version of the play. Not the musical one, because I know there's a musical one starring Kelsey Grammer. But just the regular play version. He was the Ghost of Christmas Present. Okay, so the next one I have here is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This is an epic, and yes, it's a romance, and yes, I normally say I don't like reading romances, but this is such a beautiful story. And it's not just about the romance, it's about the South, and what the South went through, what they had to endure and how they lost the war, the Civil War and everything. And it's such a good, and I love Margaret Mitchell's writing. It's so lyrical and beautiful, and there's so much story, and the character of Scarlet is incredible. Like, she's a horrible person. She's a selfish brat, but she's such a complex character for the time period this was written in, because most of the time the girls in books are just really, like, you know, you can only describe them in like a couple words. They're not very complex. And I like complex female characters. I mean, of course I do, because I am a female reader, and I want characters in my books that I read where not just the guy is complex, but someone of my sex is complex and unique and is real. Okay, so I got 2 more books. Let me go grab them. Don't get comfortable, rascals. My dog is in the chair with me. Okay, so this next reread I have on my top 10 rereads is one that I already started rereading, and that is Fahrenheit 451. I remember this is one of the classics we had to read for school that I actually really liked. I thought it was a very interesting, complex story. It's, the thing is, I wouldn't call it dystopian because the world is, you know, it's kind of like ours, except for the whole book burning thing and stuff. But it's not, I guess it's not as weird or as, like, government controlled. It's like the beginnings of a dystopian, I guess you could say. Because it's like not as, like I said, it's not as controlled by the government as a lot of them are, like 1984 and the Divergent series and the Hunger Games. This is like the moment when it's starting to, I feel like this feels like the moment when it's starting to be controlled by the government. And I'm in the middle of it, like the main character, Guy Montag, is learning about why the firemen burn books. And at the time, firemen didn't always burn books. That sometimes they actually put out fires instead. And he's starting to question the government, like as you do in every dystopian novel, you know. That's what creates conflict, is the protagonist starts questioning things and starts to realize that this isn't right, the way they're running things. Okay, so next, I want to reread of this. This is a one of those Barnes & Noble hardback and fancy editions of Steinbeck's novels, his short novels. Because the next one I want to reread is Of Mice and Men by Steinbeck. I remember reading this, I think in middle school I read it, and at the time, I didn't like it back then. But I want to read it. Now that I'm older and more mature of a reader, I want to try it again. I want to reread it again and see if I can get into it. And if I still don't like it, then I guess I don't like it. But I've been wanting to get into Steinbeck a lot more. I have a novel, I have The Grapes of Wrath. I just bought that from the used bookstore, and I also have East of Eden, which I bought that at Books A Million, which was more expensive, but I did not see it at the bookstore, at the used bookstore. And last, I have a book from the last book in a series, and that is The Deathly Hallows. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, to be more specific. This is the 7th book in the series. I've already reread the first 6 books, and I'm due for rereading the last book, but I haven't gotten around to it. But I guess I decided to just take a break and take a step back and not read the last book right away. That's why I haven't read it, just because I decided I don't want to reread it right now. I just want to take a break from this world. But I just love this, I love this book. I love the series. It's one of my top favorite series. And as far as series go, as far as the series I've read, this is one of my top. And this is the first fantasy series I ever got into, so it always will hold a special place in my heart. So now I want to reread this soon. So those are all the top 10 books on my TBR that I want to reread. So what are your books that you've already read that you want to reread? If you like this book, if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you are interested in seeing more of my lovely monotone self. And I will talk to you guys later. Alright, bye.